What's up, friends? It's me, Photo Bob, and today we are looking at the Sigma 30mm F1.4 for micro four thirds. Is this a lens that you should consider buying? Let's find out. And I'm doing a family photo shoot, and the family's going to be really pushed for time. They have members that are in from out of town, and they're leaving tomorrow, and they have events scheduled all day. So I had to find something close to where they're going to be because we're going to run out of light. So this is a little city park I found, and I really love the location here. We've got a dock we can work with, we've got this lake, and then we've got some really cool trails that go around the lake as well. Now, one little tip: when you're shooting on water, water can be really beautiful or it can be really ugly, depending on how you use it and what the water looks like, mainly the glare. So if we take a look at the pond here, you'll see in the dark areas, in the shadows, and it doesn't really show up that great on here, but you've got some really beautiful reflection with the trees coming in and even the orange pine needles there. That will make for a great background. What won't make for a great background is this water you see here, the water that's got the high shine and the glare on it. That's a really ugly background in photos. It's just blown out, adds nothing to the picture, and becomes really distracting. So that's something you got to look at when you're shooting around water. I'm always really careful when I do shoot around water to make sure I know what I'm getting into before I get out there and actually shoot. So we're going to work on some of these benches over there. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a bench right at the edge of the water. There's some benches right over here at the edge of the water, and then we'll get these pretty reflections in there. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to talking about the lens. All right, you know what? These cars are way too loud. This has to be loud on camera. Let's take this inside. Much better. All right, should be a little quieter here. All right, so we're gonna look at three areas of this lens: build quality, performance, and price/value. So let's start with build quality. When we compare it to the 16mm 1.4, which I recently did kind of a mini review on, it's really about the same build quality. Everything I said about the 16 rings true for this. Nice metal construction, good manual focus ring, very smooth, nice lens hood, center pinch lens caps, which I prefer. So everything's good on it. The only difference is the 16mm is weather sealed, where the 30mm is not. Now, I would always prefer a lens to be weather sealed. I need it. What I'm using the 30mm for is portrait work, and I don't shoot many portraits in the rain. You know, occasionally I'll get caught in the rain, but it's not something that is significant for this lens, so I don't care. Doesn't bother me at all that it doesn't have it. Of course I would prefer it, but overall for build quality, I'm gonna give it an 8. It would score a 9 or so if it were weather sealed, but you know, again, to me that's really not an issue. Other thing I'd like to mention is the size. It's really a nice size lens. Here's the 16, here's the 30, so it's smaller than the 16, but it's still big enough where it balances well on a camera, and it's very easy to operate the focus ring. So just a joy to shoot. It's really a fun lens to shoot. So overall, yeah, really like it. Next is the performance, and this is where it's almost all sunshine and roses with one big downside. So let's talk about the pros of this lens first when it comes to performance. So this is a fast prime, and most of us buy fast prime so we can shoot on that low end for either low light and or that blurred background. And that's where I spend most of my time shooting this lens, at 1.4 to 1.8. At those apertures, it is sharp. It is perfectly fine for portraitures. For portraits, I think you'll be very pleased with this lens. As you stop down to f2.8, it starts getting sharper, and by f4 it is tack sharp. So there's no issues with sharpness there whatsoever. Now, again, I typically shoot my portraits at 1.4. If there is not a reason to blur the background, like if my subject, for example, is up against the wall, then I will stop down to f4 if I feel like having that background blur will not add to the photo, and I'll stop down just to get maximum sharpness. Or occasionally with the 30mm, if I want to show the surroundings, I'll stop down as well. But most of the time it's at f1.4 and I'm totally fine, totally happy shooting there as far as sharpness is concerned. I guess this goes along with performance, and this would be the focal length. So this is a 30mm focal length on micro four thirds, which is 60mm full frame equivalent, which is a little unique, and I love it. I really like this focal length. I fell in love with this focal length when I first got into micro four thirds, or early on. I can't remember which body I was shooting at the time, but I bought a really inexpensive Sigma 30mm f2.8 lens, and they had a 60mm f2.8 lens as well. And I bought both of those, and the 30mm, I loved it. I just really gelled with the lens. It's a good lens. It wasn't the best performer, but I like the focal length. And what I like about it is it's great for portraits. It's really, really good for portraits. It's a very comfortable working distance, especially for children. I do a lot of family photography, and I'll do a lot of high volume sports photography of little kids in their soccer uniforms or in gymnastics. And I find that this focal length is perfect for that type of portraiture. It still gives you enough of that background blur, and it's a little bit tighter than a 50mm equivalent, which I like for portraits. But it still allows me to get close enough to my subject to try to maintain some sort of control. When you're working with children, they only sit still for a second. And sometimes if I don't have my assistant there, then I'm, getting the child set up and posed the way we need it, take a few steps back and take the picture. If I'm working with a longer focal length, it's too far of a working distance with kids, and they're going to move like that. It's a constant struggle. Well, when I moved to the 30mm, I found that I was still close enough to where I maintained more control. And I love that about this lens. So I really like that 30mm focal length. Now, if you're buying this lens as a general purpose walk around, you may find that it's too tight, and you might prefer that 50mm equivalent over the 60mm equivalent, because just that 10mm right there, it does make a pretty significant difference. So if you're buying it for like a street walk around type lens, you may find that this lens is too tight. If you're buying this for just a portrait lens, perfect. You'll love it, promise. So that brings me to the cons of this lens. And really, the frustrating thing is there are no cons. There's just a con. There's just one thing that bothers me about this lens, and I think that's what makes it so frustrating. This lens suffers from horrible chromatic aberration. It has blue and purple fringing that is just really, really, really apparent. Now, when people talk about chromatic aberration during lens reviews, honestly, it really doesn't bother me that much, because it's usually just easily corrected. It shows up, but it's corrected either in camera or it's corrected in Lightroom with just a click of a button, no big deal. But this lens has it to a degree that it's not easily corrected in some situations, and I have to go in and manually fix it up in post, and that's just more time of me editing, and I can't have that. I can't have a lens that costs me more time editing than would be necessary with another lens similar to it. So that's the thing that I'm really torn about. Now, the chromatic aberration really only shows up at the faster aperture, so at 1.4 to maybe 1.8 is when it shows up, and that's pretty typical of fast primes. By f2.8, it's pretty much gone. f4, it's a non-issue. But again, most of us are going to be shooting at the we're going to want to be shooting at the f1.4, so it is an issue. I wish I could say it wasn't, but that's why I am really torn on this lens and whether I can recommend it or not. I've been surprised at the reviews I've seen because people have been going pretty easy on it. I don't know if it's just something they haven't shot a whole lot of, so they haven't noticed it. But I've been shooting this lens for, I don't know, 3-4 months. I've literally taken thousands of pictures on it. I've shot multiple weddings with this. I've shot about 400 kids in a soccer league with this. I have done over 20 family sessions using this lens during those sessions, not exclusively, but during that session. I've done senior shoots with this. And I know when the fringing is going to show up, and so I can always stop down and avoid it, but I don't want to have to do that. So I'm torn on whether I'm going to keep this lens or if I'm going to go back to the Olympus 25mm 1.2. I really want to stay with this lens. I wish they'd make a version 2. I know it's not going to happen, but if they made a weather sealed version of this without the chromatic aberration, this would be, I would be ranting and raving, fanboying about this lens, but got to be honest with you guys. So the last thing, that brings us to price and value. I love value. The Sigma lenses are known for their value, and I think that is right where this lens falls. An incredible performer at a good value, except for the chromatic aberration. So this lens goes for about $350. New, you can get it used for, I've seen it in the 200s, which is just a steal for a lens like this. It's a little bit cheaper than the 16mm, which my favorite. So price and value, again, I've got to give it super high ratings for that. You're gonna like it. Just know and be aware that the chromatic aberration on it is atrocious. All right, that's it. That's my review of the Sigma 30mm 1.4. It is almost amazing, but it's not. Thanks for joining me. Bye.